In this lesson, we're going to do some test bakes of our normal maps. Alright, so before I begin creating the final normal map of any of my objects, I always like to do test bakes, especially whenever I have multiple objects that are going to be part of a game object. Okay, so we have the cylinder, we have the crane. All of these different pieces need to come together in one UV coordinate system, okay, in one section. So it's all going to come together in one texture map. But before I start doing all of that, I always like to do test bakes on all of my different objects, make sure that they look good, and then bring them in. So let's go ahead and select the low poly frame. Okay. With it selected, let's go ahead and hit 0 on the keyboard. Up here, it's going to bring up the Render to Texture dialog box. And the first thing you need to do is go ahead and set where you want your files to be saved. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on a path. And I'm going to put it in the 3ds Max files. I'm going to put it in the project files folder. And it's going to be in scene assets and images. So we'll find those here in just a little while. I'm also going to turn off this skip existing file. So if I happen to rebake, I'm not going to get that same message coming up saying, are you sure you want to overwrite? Yes, I'm sure. So then let's go ahead and go to Setup, and then I'm going to go to Renderer. Make sure that your anti-aliasing is turned on, set it to Catmull ROM, and then also enable Super Sampler, or Global Super Sampler, and set that to Hammersley. For me, that just gives me a better bake on my ambient occlusions and also on my normal maps. So I go ahead and just set that up once. Go ahead and turn that off, and then let's go into our next section. You should have the low poly frame selected, and then you should see that highlighted right here in the objects to bake. If it's not selected, that will not be in the scene or in the list here. You also want to make sure that you have your padding enabled, and so you want to give it a padding of 2. What this does is it bakes out information 2 pixels past the UV. Okay, so that's very important. Make sure you put that in there. Next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and tell it what to project. So what should the source be? So we're going to go ahead and pick that source, and we're going to say high poly frame. Go ahead and add that, and then give that just a moment to add. You might even see that 3ds Max says not responding, just like now. Just give it a moment, and that'll finish itself out. Now you'll notice that once that finishes, you'll notice that we have this projection cage, and then we also have a projection modifier that's added to this. The cage is going to look really weird at first, and it actually looks very messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reset this. So to reset a cage, you need to go down into your project modifier, or projection modifier, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see this reset. Click on that, and you'll notice that the cage resets to the conformed shape of the low poly object. Now what we want to do is go ahead and turn on shaded and point to point. This is just going to help whenever we start adjusting this cage to fit around the high poly object. Now we have created this low poly object to fit fairly close to the high poly object, so we shouldn't have to do that much of movement. The only thing that we really need to do is to adjust our push amount here. And what that will do is it will push the points of the cage outward in their local directions based on the normal, and it will push those out trying to encompass the high poly model. So you'll see right here, because we have shaded turned on, it looks kind of white, but then the areas that is not covering up through the cage is showing up as that regular material color. So now what we can do is take this push amount, and we can just push that up. We'll go to about, let's say, 0.1. Might give us a pretty good value. Might even go a little less than that. The less the better. So let's do something like let's just do 0.1. I think that's going to be good. So with that, if you need to, just in case, let's say that you're trying to get that 0.1 value there, what you can do is you can get close, and then you can reset and then just type in the value if you need to under amount. Okay? So now we need to go through, we need to make sure that we get all of our information. So all of the high poly is inside of this cage. So do a quick check around your edges. So you can see like right here that's sticking out. What you can do is go to cage mode. You can select the individual points of the cage, and you can pull those out using your move tool, and you can get that to cover up there. Okay, now you don't want to skew that too much, because if you do, what's going to happen is it's going to skew that information in the normal map. So it might be easier to take all of these faces right here and pull those out. So that way we don't have to move it so much. Go around this side. Let's do the same thing here. Now a really quick way to move that entire polygon of that cage is to go to face mode, select that face, then hold down Control and go to cage mode, and that will convert your selection. Then you can just grab your move tool, pull that out in the X, and there we go. Do a couple more checks here. You can see like right here along the back, we're missing some information, so we'll go ahead and we'll grab that one. Let's hold Control, go to cage mode, grab your move tool, hitting W, pull that straight out a little bit. Let's do the same thing here. Oops. And Control and select cage. Move that out just a little bit. You don't have to do a lot. Now, it's impossible to get every single point. There are going to be some points that we're going to miss. Not a big issue, because we're doing test bakes right now. I'm going to show you how we can identify where those places are that we've missed. Now, you'll notice here that on the floating geometry, which are these screws, we need to bake that into our normal map, but they're not inside of that cage. So what we need to do is go ahead and select the faces that are over that information, hold down Control, and go to cage mode, grab your move tool, and just pull that out until it encompasses that screw. So it should look just like that. Let's do the same thing down here. Now with this one, it's just a single point, so let's pull that out. And then let's go to here, let's take this face and this face, hold Control, convert it to cage, grab your move tool and pull that out. So there we go. You can do a couple of checks around the edges here, just make sure that you're looking okay. Let me go across the top here, just take a quick look. I think for the most part we're doing pretty well. We can check for any errors or anything like that. So now that we have that, we're ready to do a test bake on this. I'm going to go ahead and turn off cage mode, and then I'm going to go down into my options again. Let's make sure that all of this is set to existing channel on both of those. And then actually this one I think can go to automatic unwrap. That should be the default value there. So we'll leave that the way it is, and then I'm going to go to this object here, and you may notice that it may be blank. Let's go ahead and delete it out. Let me start out from the beginning here. Let's add that, and we're going to add our normals map, and that's going to add it right into here. Go ahead and give it a name. So in this case, I'm going to do LP underscore frame underscore NM for normal map. Turn off your target map slot to none, because I don't want that to be applied anywhere in a material. And then we need to adjust its size. So with this still selected, go ahead and adjust it to 512, just for a quick bake on that. Now with that, we're finished. Let's go ahead and hit render. It's going to bring up our render window here. Give it just a moment to do so. Try that one more time there. It looks like it's not bringing up my render frame window. Let's try this again. Let's turn that off there. And let me go ahead and overwrite the file. And there it's bringing that up. Not sure why it did that, but all right. So there's our rendered window. Everything's coming up. You can see all these red marks. That was from a previous bake that I did just in between lessons. But you can see here that we've got this little red spot here. And what that means is that's a ray mischeck. And so what that means is that there is a spot on the cage that it's not getting that information. So what is this piece right here? Well, let's go ahead and let's see if we can find that. I don't remember what that was. I know that it was a circular piece. I think it was right around this piece here. I could be wrong. Let's see if we can find that. And actually that might be, is that right here? I apologize, I don't really remember where that one was at. Well, it's not really that big of a deal. It's such a small piece there. We can find it. We're just doing a test bake right now. And I'm looking at everything, and it looks pretty good. A couple of other areas that you'll want to pay attention to are just like any weird flat areas that might be on the normal, like this. It doesn't seem like there's any information there. And so sometimes that means that we're very close to the cage on that, and it's picking it up, but it's not getting all of it. And so it looks like maybe there might be a point in the cage here, right around in here, that just needs to be adjusted a little bit. So let's take this, pull that out in the X a little bit more. Same thing here. Okay. And there's that spot right there. Okay. Let's take that one, let's pull that out. And then we've got one more right here. Okay, and just kind of thinking about where these points are. Now, it looks like we forgot this right here. Let's go ahead and grab that face and this face. Sometimes that ray miss check does not always work, and so you just want to make sure that you're paying attention as to what is being brought in. So that looks good. Still stumped about where that place is on that ray miss check. We'll find out, but let's go ahead and just turn that off. Let's do another quick bake on this. We'll render that, and then in the next lesson what I want to do is I want to take this information, I want to take this normal map, I want to apply it to our low resolution mesh. I want to make sure that it looks good, it translates well on our object, and make sure that our normal map looks proper, and then make any adjustments to our smoothing groups or our UVs if we need to. So we'll go ahead and get started on that in our next lesson.